Hello, this is your instructor, Dr. Todd Daniel, and for week 11, we're going to be talking about independent and paired t-tests. So far, we have been using single sample techniques in which we draw a single sample from a population, do something to that sample, and then see if it is still like the population. The two tests that we've learned about so far are the z-test and the single sample t-test. So we start with a population, we pull our sample from that population, and then we do something. We give the sample a treatment. We give them education. We give them a drug. And we see if now they are different than the population from which they were drawn. Single sample techniques, those are the basics for statistics. But much of the time, we want to know something more or something different, and we need a different way of comparing groups. We want to compare two samples. There may be several ways in which we would go about doing this. Let's say we want to know who is better at parallel parking, men or women. Now, we don't need to know the population values for men and women. Many times we don't know population values as we get started with our statistics. So what we might do is we get a randomly selected group, a randomly selected sample of men and of women, and then we give them this test and we find out who scores more highly. So we could compare separate samples, two different groups measured at the same time, and this is called an independent measures test or a between subjects design. The two groups are independent of each other. The male scores are separate from and independent of the female scores. No matter which group you're in, how well you score does not affect how well someone scores in the other group. So overall, we are looking for differences between these two groups of subjects. So it's a between subjects design. But let's say we have a new education program, and we want to know whether our education program increases knowledge among those who take the program. So we, because we don't know the population value, just start with the people who come to our program. How do we compare two groups out of that? Well, what we're going to do is use the same group and measure it twice. So we'll start by giving this group a pretest. Then we give them the education and we give them the same post-test to see whether their scores increased or changed over time. What occurred in that time was the education. And if our program worked, then we should see higher scores on the post-test than on the pre-test. So this pre-post design uses the same people being measured more than once, and that is called a repeated measures test or a within subjects design. Repeated measures because we are measuring the same group more than once, repeatedly. We are looking for differences within this group over time, so it is a within subjects design. Now those are the two ways that we can create two samples, and those are the two types of samples that we're going to be looking at as we study independent and repeated measures t-tests.